This is my ACR AK project. I was attracted to this for a few reasons. I've been following the ACR forum for a fair amount of time, and I got to see someone's prototype of taking an airsoft lower and modifying it to make it feed actual AK mags into a real ACR. So I saw that and I was very attracted to it because I have a lot of AKs, I have a lot of AK ammos, I have a lot of AK mags, and being able to fire that round and use those mags on a modern platform, it was very attractive to me. When I say modern, AKs are great. AKs are still my go-to guns. This is very much a proof of concept gun that I just wanted to prove to myself that I could actually do this. The downfalls that I have with AKs is very hard to mount lights, lasers, and suppressors onto an AK without sacrificing something. So modern platform, very attractive, being able to use AK mags. The modifications I saw to the airsoft lower were something I knew I could do, so this was my stab at it. So what I'm going to do is go over all the parts that I had to make or build or modify to get this project to work. Start at the front, sort of work my way to the back. So the first part, another airsoft part, a handguard. This handguard attracted to me because number one, I got it for super cheap. Number two, it's metal. Once I put a suppressor on this thing, it's going to get really hot and I can't have a polymer one, and it's slim. The enhanced railed handguard that came with this, just unnecessarily bulky. There's no reason to have that. The only thing I have mounted on here is a flashlight. The small aluminum mounts that I made from scratch, obviously they haven't been anodized, I have to send that off to get that done. Just to mount the IR white light laser or Surefire that I have on here. So I will take that off and show the modifications that I had to do that. The captured pin was also a big win. The pin and this mount, the pin was made from scratch, made from 17.4 pH and very tight. So the actual handguard, again, the only thing I have on here is a flashlight. That's why I need all the rail sections. I had to make the pin and add this piece of aluminum JB Weld on here, milled it to fit the profile. You can see a small hole for the pin and the spring that loads the pin that holds the actual mounting pin and holds it in place. The only other change I had to do to this was the mounting points on the actual airsoft rifle for this is much smaller than the real rifle, this hole right here, or this channel. So I used new screws and milled down some brass shims so it fits in here nice and snug. It's a really sturdy handguard, it's solid aluminum, it mounts the one thing I need on it, so I really can't complain. Next, going down to the barrel. The barrel is a 10.5 inch 7.62 by 39 barrel. The actual design for this thing is something I just took from Marvin Pitts. Marvin Pitts and Nefarious Firearms, can't talk them up enough. So this is just a one-off prototype that I did to prove to myself that I could actually do the work. If you actually want this rifle, you have to go buy it from someone or have to pay someone to build it. Nefarious Arms is probably the best bet you can go. Please go talk to them. I'm flattered when people ask me to make things for them, but that's not what I'm here to do. I don't do this for a living, I do this for fun for me. Alright, so the details around this, 10.5 inch barrel. This came with a 16 inch barrel, very heavy profile. Cut it down to 10.5 inch, turned down the diameter here and here, threaded this whole portion and turned this down so there's a nice tight fit, so this is as deep as possible into there. The op rod support for the holding the spring and guiding this op rod. This is milled out of 4140 steel, turned down in the lathe to be about 1/1000 of an inch tighter than the outer diameter of this, pressed on, drilled through, reamed with a 2-0 reamer so it takes the same pins as the gas block. The only other change I did to this was the actual barrel anyways, was the gas port. The gas port came in as 0.065 inches because it was a 16 inch barrel for an AK round. So I had to enlarge this very slowly, starting from 0.65 all the way up to 0.125, 1/8 of an inch. So that's how much gas I needed to get back. And I'll show you why there's so much needed gas for this setup. Only other change I did to this whole assembly was to the gas block and the regulator. I made it a 5-position regulator. Why I did that? Just because I wanted to see if I actually do it. So there's fully closed, there is wide open, a little less open, and barely open. I wanted to test and see if the very tiny carbide drill bits I had would actually be hard enough to do it. And I did. I don't use anything right now except closed. When I have the suppressor, I'm probably not going to use anything but suppressed, but it was still fun to be able to do it. So that is the barrel. The actual upper didn't need any changes. I do have stuff for the bolt carrier group that I have to change that I'll show you. Only real work that I did on the upper was just to mill the name of my truss into the upper, so it's now legal ACR. So to focus on the upper, the real change around this was the bolt carrier group. Bolt carrier group I had to polish here with 800 to 1000 to 1500 to 2000 grit sandpaper. So these machining marks here were already there. I just had to take them down a little bit. The AK mag has to ride very high into the receiver, so high that the top feed lips rub against this. In order to minimize the amount of gas that I had to knock back to make this whole thing operate reliably, I want to take down a little bit of the friction here. So smooth this out, also smooth out the tip of the hammer, which rides right here, to smooth down that action. Other changes with the bolt and bolt carrier. The bolt is obviously custom. The bolt is from Argonauts Incorporated, great folks. They helped me in any questions I had. I have a very cheap DPMS extractor on here, which shockingly, after 1,000 rounds, did not break. The actual extractor with the stock bolt sat a little bit lower. They had a little piece of copper right here that let the extractor ride lower when there's no shell in the actual bolt. I made a piece of 4140 that fits in there a little more snug than the piece of copper and makes this ride a little bit higher. So when the bolt smashes down on a round, the amount that it has to jump over the edge of the shell is a little bit less. And it's just enough so when a round's actually in there, it still has a little bit of play. So you can still feel it move a little bit up and down when the shell is still in there. So that is probably attributed to why the DPMS extractors lasted so long. That being said, I still have an extra one laying around because I'm still expecting this one to break. Next piece, actual firing pin. This firing pin was off of the guy that was selling ACR 17-4 pH steel firing pins on Gunbroker. I still had to do some small modifications. With the stock bolt or stock firing pin design, the firing pin only extends about a little under 0.050 inches from the face of the bolt. With the standard Sega AK firing pin, it extended 0.063 inches. So I wanted to mirror that, which meant I had to turn down this shoulder, and this shoulder about 0.013 inches. That was one of the main things that I had to do to accomplish getting rid of light primer strikes on the rounds of ammunition. The other piece I fixed that was Wolf extra power spring in the hammer. So before I get to the actual lower, small change to the buttstock. The one thing I hated about the ACR when I got it was the slop. The amount of slop that was between the lower, the stock, and the upper was, in my mind, ridiculous. It only needed a little bit of tweaking. So right here I found some hobby brass that was just the right thickness that with two of these added up to just equal the inner dimensions of the upper. So all this is hobby brass that was cut with some normal scissors, JB welded on here, obviously cut to the right profile. So when it is in the upper, it is a tight fit. If you did that with the stock setup, it would fall out right away. So a small change to this just to get rid of some of the slop. Next, most interesting part probably is the actual lower. So start with the pins, custom. The pins that came from the airsoft rifle were probably 0.043 inches in diameter. The holes in the trunnion and the buttstock are very close to 0.25, not 0.251 inches. These are both right at 0.250 inches, so they're a nice snug fit. I am not going to harden these. It's really hard steel to soft steel to, or softer steel to plastic. So it's not like it's steel. So I have no reason to harden these. I'm going to leave these as is. I'm still going to refinish them. Let me dismantle this real quick. Again, the only change to the fire control group was just the spring, for the hammer spring. Everything else, file that down just so the bolt carriers slide back a little easier. Everything else, stock. Now the actual lower. Lower had to be beefed up a lot. So this area for the actual airsoft was completely open. This plastic is PVDF plastic. It was high tensile strength, high impact strength, and it was listed as medium temperature tolerances. The melting point is 177 degrees Celsius. There's going to be tons of other things that are going to fail on this rifle before I get to that temperature, so I was fine with it. This is one big block that I had to mill out. So it would reinforce this, reinforce with a buttstock actually grabbed into the lower, as well as this piece right here, which makes it so it's a nice tight fit for the fire control group. It's actually a tighter fit than the stock lower. Moving or focusing on the middle, the magazine latch. This is actually the second revision I had on the magazine latch. The first revision, I mistakenly assumed that the pinholes, the stock pinholes, which lined up about right there, would work with a mag. What I learned very quickly was that with the pin right here, the force of a mag with metal feed lips was just enough and just at the right angle just to push the latch out of the way. It's hard to do when it's not actually in there, but if it was in here in the lower and you hit this forward, it would just push the latch back and slide out. So a mag would just fall out of the gun if you hit it at the right angle without ever having to touch the latch. So this was a nice failure. So the current one, what I had to do was take the pinhole from here and move it up and back. So these dimensions were as close as I could get to the actual AK dimensions of where the top of the mag feed lip hits and where the pivot pin is for the latch. So this is as close as I could get within the dimensions of the lower. So with that, now it does not fall out. That's pretty much all there is to the latch piece, which is steel. Both of these are also 4140 steel, as well as the latch. This piece right here, the front lug, or whatever you want to call it, is also modeled after the front trunnion of an AK. The front trunnion of an AK has the locking lugs double dutying, so they prevent the front of the mag from over inserting. This prevents the front of the mag from tilting up into the receiver. And if I didn't have this, I would get misfeeds because the bolt was sort of digging in at an angle. This wouldn't have enough velocity to come forward to always feed the rounds. The mag had to basically be pressed in that way for the rounds to feed. So you can see there's a ledge right here and a ledge right here that prevents the mag from going up. This is actually a feed ramp. This is the actual mounting point for the front of the mag, and they're obviously two pieces. The better design would have been for these to be one big piece of steel. That was just beyond my capacity, and I know the design is going to fail in some other weak point way before that's ever needed. One thing to note about here is the variance in AK mags was very frustrating around this. So if you compare a PMag, you have a fair amount of slop in the PMag. Still feeds fine, but you have a little bit of lateral play, you have a little bit of vertical play. Very little twist, so there's not much horizontal play. The AK steel mags, and I've run a variety of steel mags, Polish, German, the Chicom ones that don't have the rear rib, actual Ruski ones, tons of Romanian ones. These have the greatest variance. Now I made sure that all P-mags and all Circle 10s fed fine, so the P-mags had the loosest fit, and obviously the Circle 10s had the tightest fit. These were consistently the widest. The steels were all over the place. What I learned about the steels was the height of the top of the feed lip in relation to the top of the rear lug was all over the place. With an AK bolt, it's very forgiving because the height of the lug that grabs the back of the round is basically this tall. With an AR bolt, you have about half of that. When you're in here, the actual other lugs ride on top of the feed lips, and there's probably half, if not half, the height of the lugs of an AK bolt to grab the round. So you have pretty tight tolerances you need. So the AK mags, the steel ones that I didn't have feed, I can bend them up to make them work, or I can just keep using P mags and Circle 10s. It's a double-edged sword here. If I made it fit the steel mags, it wouldn't work with the Circle. If I made it work with all the steel mags, it wouldn't work with Circle 10s. If I made it work with just Circle 10s, then it wouldn't feed P mags. So I wanted to have a middle ground. I wanted to hit some of the steels, and I wanted to hit all the Circle 10s and all the P mags. That's the best middle ground I could find. So with all that being said, I'm going to take apart these small pieces and show you the details on them. So give me a second while I dismantle this thing. Okay, so these are all the pieces. Spring, latch, and front shooting. So these three pieces are going to get sent to a place in California for them to heat treat for me. They're going to be sent back. We finish them, clean up this lower, paint it, and I will do a checkup video from that. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions on any of the details for any of these pieces, or any questions at all, for the most part I've posted details up on the ACR forums. If you need anything else, just post in the comments and I will post more details. Thank you.